What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back to the Movie Battleground. We are back here today with another match in the 1-0 bracket. Recently, we've had a couple of matches from the 0-1 bracket come out. We're kind of working our way through those first set of players, but today we are back after already we've had two great matches go up from the 1-0 bracket, and we are back for another one tonight. And these two guys are certainly rearing to return. We have in the ring tonight, Austin Pez Howell, who had a very big, boisterous debut against Jacob Barber, and he is going up against Chad Webb, who also had a very impressive start against Jonathan Peck. Both of these gentlemen came in big, strong, going for it, narrowly missing a potential knockout in both matches, so much so that I even had people messaging me saying, I think that would have been a knockout, or I honestly think this was closer, or yada yada. So these guys definitely brought the heat the first round, and now they're going into a second match where they both got paired against a tough opponent. Only one gets to move on, but either way, I think we are in for something special tonight. And let's go ahead and bring in the competitors. Introducing first, returning to the Movie Battleground with a record of 1-0, he is Mr. Chadwick Webb. Joining me on screen. Chad, how's it going?
My name's Chad, and I like to party.
All right. Well, this will certainly be some kind of party. I don't know what kind, but it will be a party. Chad, first off, welcome back to the Movie Battleground.
Thank you.
How are you feeling returning after what was a very good debut?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun my first match, and I'm interested to see how this one's going to go. I know this is a way tougher competitor than my first one. No shade to the other competitor I faced, but this guy, he got a really good win. I watched his match a few times, and I was like, damn, this guy's fire. But hey, I think I brought it too, so I'm kind of interested to see how this goes down.
Absolutely. And moving from match one to match two, what do you think helped you the most in terms of preparing? What did you learn from that first match?
I think, maybe not winging it as much, because I was stepping over myself, I think, a lot, just watching a lot behind the scenes stuff, and just getting, a good perspective of what these films are, just why my choice is the better choice, and just really trying to hone in on that, and see if I can make some good arguments. And yeah.
All right, absolutely. We will see you in just a minute. I will send you to the back, though, as we will bring in your opponent. Also entering with a record of 1-0, he is Austin Pez Howell. Austin, welcome back to the Movie Battleground, sir. And on your last time in, you came in, you were rearing, you were ready to go. A bit of an outsider in this sense that a lot of our players play in the fan leagues. You are not as familiar with those in terms of movie trivia. You are here for the debate, and I think you backed up the talk. How are you feeling going into this?
Well, once again, Aaron, it's your pleasure to have me on the Movie Battleground as I enter here, as exactly as I said I would be, a winner in the winner's bracket. And this will be another example of what I'm going to do to Mr. Chadwick over here. He's a nice guy. He's golly gee willikers. I got to win. I sure hope I don't screw up this time. You better bring it, boy, because this is what I'm going to do to Chadwick, is I'm going to pull a John Wick. I'm metaphorically going for the head. And the whole nice guys finish last moniker you hear throughout life, it's going to apply right here to the battleground.
Well, I will say it is absolutely my pleasure to have you, as it is all 32 other competitors who are willing to participate in this. What did you learn from your first match? Very similarly, obviously, it was your first time doing anything sort of like this. So what was your biggest takeaway from that match?
My biggest takeaway is you can make the best argument in the world, and apparently if you don't name enough Marvel characters that are simply in the movie, you won't win a round. So I'll be sure I dumb down a few of my arguments tonight while still bringing the fire. But I learned that I can absolutely back up my talk. I can back up what I preach, and it's going to be exactly the same way. I'm bringing the heavy artillery tonight, and Chadwick better be ready.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. We are marked not safe for children, so what happens, happens. We can't get in trouble either way. I'll go ahead and bring back Chad into the fight, who is now snuggling in a blanket.
That was scary.
You should be.
All right, as we'll go ahead and get into the rules of Movie Battleground. Austin
That
is not
should be
impressed
scary.
with any of this. So we'll go ahead and get this underway. Ladies and gentlemen, Movie Battleground is a match that is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first of 3 points will win. Each round is worth 1 point. If one of our competitors does happen to get 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. And if after 4 rounds of debate we have a 2-2 tie, we will move on to the blind round. Although we will deal with that when we get there. Our first 4 rounds of debate are about questions our competitors had time to prep for. They were given their questions, they were given time to prep, and they are here to debate them. The way that this will go is your 4 stages for debate. Your 1 minute opening will go first. Then you will have a 2-minute chance to expand on your argument, give a little more flesh out. Then you will have 4 minutes of open debate. This is where the competitors get back and forth with each other, scratch, claw, fight for as much time as possible before we move on to a 1-minute closing to surmise and wrap up your argument. With that said, gentlemen, do we have any questions or are we ready to go?
Ready.
All right. So we will go ahead and move into our first debate of the night. And since we're talking about heavy artillery, I figure it's worth talking about a guy who's directed some pretty big blockbusters involving artillery. Guillermo del Toro is a fan favorite for a lot of film fans. He's one that people tend to really enjoy. He's got the Oscar love. He's got the general affair. So we decided to take a nice little crap on him to get started. The question is, what is the worst film directed by one Guillermo del Toro? Now, just because you make a bad movie doesn't mean you're a bad filmmaker. Even Steven Spielberg made The Terminal. But with that said, we are going to debate what the worst film is. So he would tell you it's because of his incredible skill. I would tell you it's because of a random wheel. But Austin was named the favorite of tonight's match, and thus he had the choice to pick whether he went
as
first
it should be.
Prior to the start of the match, fate was on your side clearly there. And so with that, Austin chose to go first on questions 1 and 3, meaning he will have the chance to open his argument on this one. I will go ahead and bring up your guys' timer as it loads. And I'll take a second before I unpause it. But Austin, you will have 1 minute on the clock to open when you start speaking.
Now, I'll fully admit, I'm not the biggest Guillermo del Toro fan on the planet. I think he's a very uneven filmmaker at best, but his peaks are peaks and his lows are lows. I'm going to choose a film that has peak in the title, and that's Crimson Peak from a few years back, from 2014. To me, it's the height of what I call artistic douchebaggery. It is him giving a bloated film, being given way too much money, having nobody say no to what he wants to do. It's a tale of 2 movies. He wants it to be this gothic romantic movie. He also wants it to be this supernatural ghost film, and it succeeds at neither. And that's the problem, is it becomes a boring slog of a film that doesn't know what to do with itself. So my pick for the worst Guillermo del Toro film is the snooze fest that is Crimson Peak, and I will cede my time until the arguments.
All right, absolutely. Since we're at the 10-second mark, Chad, I'm going to let it roll. Once I hit 0, you may start speaking.
All right.
And there you go.
Guillermo del Toro is an auteur. He is very involved in the filmmaking process, and he makes great films. He has won Academy Awards for writing original screenplays. Unfortunately, the one film he directed but did not write was Blade 2, and it shows. Blade 2 heavily prioritizes style over substance, which might be fine, except all other Del Toro films have style and substance. In Blade 2, you get some decent fight scenes and creature designs, but you also get very little plot, no character development, bad characters, poorly constructed fight sequences, bad acting, writing that makes no sense, and it doesn't fit that well in its own trilogy. I am convinced this film could have been just as good as Hellboy 2 had Del Toro penned the script. Suppressing Del Toro and letting David S. Goyer write the script ruined Blade 2. Perhaps Blade 2 is the best Goyer has in his arsenal, but it's certainly the worst we've seen from Del Toro.
All right, and that will be a concession of time. So same thing, I'll let it roll over, and then you can go on 2 minutes, Austin.
Sounds good.
All right, Crimson Peak versus Blade 2. Let them fight. Go ahead, Austin.
All right. With Crimson Peak, you have a script that he did have a hand in that's absolutely riddled with predictability and cliches. It's something that you can see coming from a mile away every single moment. The horror moments that are in the movie are way too infrequent. You have ghost moments that are foreshadowed by something that Guillermo should know better, which is the audio boom jump scare, which he should know better not to do, which may have been a studio thing. Maybe he couldn't say no to that, but it's cheap jump scares. And literally, this movie is one of those things where it was marketed extremely poorly, to where it tried to draw people in by saying it was some kind of gothic horror movie, some kind of haunted house film, and the ghosts in the movie literally mean nothing to the story. You could remove them completely, and it would make zero difference to the plot whatsoever. You have Tom Hiddleston, who's easily the best actor in the film, but he doesn't know what to do in the movie. He's given this pseudo Shakespearean light dialogue, and he kind of looks bored throughout the thing. Mia Wasikowska is absolutely miscast. She looks confused throughout the whole thing. She's not a star at the time. She was just coming into her own with around the same time doing Cinderella. Jessica Chastain is completely over the top, chewing scenery, almost to the point of Uma Thurman level Batman and Robin territory. There's even things where there's dialogue, there's poor dubbing over the dialogue, poor ADR. It's just sloppy. Every metaphor that this movie delivers has the subtlety of a sledgehammer shot to the head. It is absolutely, I mean, the movie, I will say this, the movie looks good, as most Del Toro movies do. I will give it that. But if you have all look and no substance, there's nowhere to go. Okay. It's a 2-hour movie that feels like 3 hours, which is the worst thing you could possibly be, is checking your watch in the theater to see when the movie's going to be over. If you're falling asleep, that is never good. Blade 2 is at least entertaining. It's bloody. It's got great fight scenes. It's got a good cast, and it actually amps up the stakes from the first Blade film. They introduced a lot of nice mythology and expand on gadgets and the creatures. The Ravagers are great, or the Reapers, excuse me. I think it's a step up from the first one.
And that is going to be time. All right, Chad, when you start speaking, 2 minutes on the clock.
Blade 2 consists of a bunch of fighting and exposition and not much else. I guess they felt they needed to dumb it down because that's who watches comic book movies, right? The movie betrays a big moment from the first movie by bringing Whistler back. It's an unnecessary retcon. It's a bad sequel. A lot of the fights have way too many cuts. I counted 50 in the final fight. Blade sometimes fights a group of enemies one at a time so he can pose. Most of the lighting is either very dark or blue, which has never been an appealing choice. They gave great actors like Christopherson and Perlman nothing to work with. Perlman's character turns his back on Blade at one moment after he falls into the red Kool-Aid, I guess just forgetting that it would heal him, hence bad writing. Since none of the characters are developed, moments that they wanted to be big, like when Scud reveals his betrayal, it has no weight at all. Blade doesn't even act phase, so why should we? Crimson Peak, on the other hand, is a fucking brilliant, underrated film. It is pure Del Toro. When you let a master take the reins, this is what you get: a brilliant Bronte-esque tragic romance story with some great scares. The movie foreshadows ghosts as metaphors for the past, holding on to deep feelings of emotion, drive, loss, revenge, or love. So they actually provide substance to the story. You see Thomas going from being manipulated by his sister to falling in love and realizing he doesn't want to take advantage of Edith. Her influence makes him a better person, i.e. great character development. The acting in this film is phenomenal, especially with Hiddleston and Chastain. It's easy to get invested in these characters. The movie looks fantastic. Dan Louston did the cinematography for this, The Shape of Water, and John Wick movies. I think Blade 2 could have used a touch of Dan. There was also smart uses of color, lighting, and clothing to portray differences in tone. Scenes are lighter in New York and darker in Crimson Peak to show the sadness that resides there. Edith was dressed in yellow gowns to show she is a presence of good. Just little touches that add to the ambiance that really make this a great film. I think Crimson Peak just gets better and better each time you watch it, whereas Blade 2 kind of has the opposite effect. And also, Stephen King praised Crimson Peak, saying it's gorgeous and just fucking terrifying, and that's electrified. And it electrified him like Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. I mean, if you can get praise like that from the master of horror, absolutely.
All right, we'll go ahead and let the clock run out, and then I will pause it for just a sec, give you guys a moment to collect your thoughts. We are at the 4-minute open debate, so the clock will restart for 4 minutes when the first person speaks.
So I don't really take much stock in what Stephen King said. He hates Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and then made his own horrible TV version. So you know what? That means absolutely nothing to me. Look, Blade 2 raises the stakes in every way. It introduces new mythology. It takes it back to Prague. So you actually get Del Toro diving into the actual Gothic vampire mythos, taking it to sort of this Euro setting, the Euro trash setting. And it introduces these vampire mercs where he has to work with vampires to go against a super threat, and to me that's raising the stakes, and that's a good setup and good writing.
I mean, it just doesn't really make sense. Like, all of the damn character moments in this movie are just not, they don't mean that much. I mean, you have frickin' Norman Reedus before he's Daryl coming in, is just going, oh, by the way, I betrayed you, and then Blade, he could have had some sort of like moment there where he's like, instead he's like, I knew it all along. It's just fucking dumb.
Norman Reedus' character is great. He's almost like a Q, introducing a lot of these new gadgets that are a lot of fun. Again, it's part of the expanding the mythos of it. You got like sunlight grenades and all kinds of like cool stuff for Blade to use and the things. And I think I really love the fight scenes in Blade 2, and some of them were choreographed by Donnie Yen before he was really Donnie Yen as we know him.
Oh, I'm glad you bring up fucking Donnie Yen, because Donnie Yen's wasted in this movie. He's like fucking one of the
because he was going behind the scenes. Because they were using him behind the scenes to coordinate the fights.
Guys, and basically, they could have made him have a really great fight fighting Blade. They didn't do it. It's just
we know that now. He was an unknown in 2002. He wasn't Hitman yet.
Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the fight scenes are just not that great. Like, there's just way too many cuts in these, and the lighting is really bad. So it's just like,
there's no more
and then
cuts than any other action film.
Yes,
no
there
more.
is.
Absolutely not.
Basically, you talked about the weapons too, and like they have like all of these, the light grenades things. They use them, and then they don't even use them again anymore in the film. They decide to go ahead and still use all the guns and stuff just to make it a movie.
Because they realize it's too
ridiculous.
risky, because they're part vampire themselves. If they use it, they risk using it on themselves.
They figured out ways around that, and they basically just decided to still do it.
Look, you want to talk about writing? I mean, with the point I made about Crimson Peak, that you could take out the ghost aspect and it literally makes no difference to the story. That's bad writing. That's putting in stuff that for literally no reason whatsoever.
I literally explained it's all a metaphor. It's basically the hauntedness of Crimson Peak, the place. It's just like the pain that still resides there, and it's basically like the past hanging on, and that's basically what his sister is doing to him. Is just she will not let him go, and it's basically like exactly the same thing. It's just her holding on to the pain, and
no, you're right.
I think that's brilliant writing.
The writing is phenomenal. Right after she encounters a lot of ghosts, Tom Hiddleston comforts her by saying, "Yes, I know you've been through a troubling experience. Tomorrow we'll go to the post office."
That's because that's because he's trying to hide it. I guess he's just trying to make her feel comfortable there. But at that point, he's trying to take her for her money, and then he changes, and that's really more character development than anything in Blade too.
No, Blade, it takes Whistler's character and develops him brilliantly. Like you tease him being a villain the entire time, which only adds to the tension between that and the Reapers, the threat of the Reapers. The special effects are actually quite good. They use a lot of practical effects mixed with CGI.
My God,
the opening of the Predator stuff.
Terrible. This movie feels like
it's on par. It's
movie.
Well, it's on par with. It was made in 2002. How was that a criticism if it was made in 2002?
Because it's silly. Of its time. It's the worst thing that he's done. Like Crimson Peak also has a bunch of callbacks to other great films that he's done, like Devil's Backbone. Like a lot of the creature design is amazing in Crimson Peak.
and you see Blade, you see his influence all over Blade 2 as well, with a lot of the stuff you see in the beginning with like the needle gloves and all the different creatures. Always something to look at in the movie. You can see his influence all over it.
You have a great creature with Novak or whatever, but then you hear him talking. He goes like, "Hey, Blade."
All right, guys, that is time.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't even see the clock. Sorry.
Apologies. No, you're good. You're good. It just hit it. I had just had a loading error bringing it back up.
Okay, fair enough.
But you guys were good. You were still on track. Okay, so I'm going to let it roll from here. All right, guys, so that is the end of round 3. Austin, once it rolls over, you can go ahead and start with your 1-minute closing.
Mm-hmm. Look, to me, I will take a kick-ass action vampire movie over a snooze fest gothic romance, lazy romance movie any day of the week. And to call people who watch that movie like simpletons or whatever you call them, oh, we got to dumb it down to their level, well, then that's insulting Guillermo del Toro as well, because he went on to make Hellboy 1 and 2, and we wouldn't have Hellboy 1 and 2 if it wasn't for his success of Blade 2, which made 3 times its budget and was extremely successful, and is still beloved and called even by CBR.com, had an article about the 11 best comic book sequels that don't get talked about, and Blade 2 is on there. Blade 2 is a solid movie. You take it for what it is. It's a vampire action movie. I don't hold it up to Oscar standards or anything like that, but I would easily take that over Crimson Peak. He's aiming high, failing miserably. Again, it's 2 movies, neither one of which works, and it looks good, but looks only get you so far. As we see with many Hollywood Oscar bait and blockbuster movies, you've got to have something to it to keep the audience engaged, or they fall asleep.
All right, and that is time. Chad, I head over to you for the last word, closing when you speak.
Look, I know people like Blade 2. I know there are a lot of comic book fans out there that like it. I said dumbed down because I feel like they were talking down to people because they made a really bad movie. Crimson, he made Blade 2. He needed to make Blade 2 just so he could get to make movies like Hellboy and Crimson Peak. And Crimson Peak is fucking Guillermo del Toro through and through. And, if you don't like that movie, you might not just not like Guillermo del Toro, but that doesn't make it a bad movie. I was fucking enthralled with this movie, with the acting, just the cinematography, the story. The fight scene at the end of Crimson Peak was so much better than any fight scene in Blade 2 because I was so invested in these characters and the story and, the impact, and just like Jessica Chastain running down the stairs to attack, Edith. And I was just like, oh my God. And then the score during that moment, it's just like they put so much care into that I loved it.
And that will be time. That is the end of the fight, guys. All right. A great first round, competitive from the both of you. But for the moment, I will ship you to the back. We will see you in just a minute because I'm not doing this alone. I mean, Jesus, did you hear Austin's promo and what he talked about the judges? I'm not judging shit with this guy around. I got 3 people in the back to handle that for me. So I'll go ahead and bring on our judges. We have Mr. Jonathan Peck, Mr. Jake Reese, and Mr. JD Domash with us tonight to judge this battle. We're going to go in that order for the first question. So, Jonathan, I go to you. In as concise a way as you can hit it, who sold you the most? Who's getting the point?
Based on the arguments themselves and based on the reasoning behind it compared to other films' counter structure, I'm actually going to give my point to Austin on this one. So I think he sold me more to why Crimson Peak that just didn't live up to like Del Toro's film standards, though, and he pointed out some reasons that they're basically 2 different films. It just didn't know what type of movie it's going to be and more consistent. Of his films, I'll even put some good counters. Why Blade 2 that have some great elements in the film, though.
All right, Jake, I go to you. As concise as you can hit it. Who gets your point and what soldier?
I wrote a bunch of things here. I promise they're words. Pez got it for me too. Just his final argument and the whole Stephen King counter worked for me.
All right. Well, JD, thank you for being here. You'll speak in a little bit, but not at the moment, because with that, Austin will take the first point as I send our competitors or judges to the back and bring our competitors back on screen. But with that, we will go ahead and move on to question number 2. And while we're talking about directors, let's move on to talk about another director. Ivan Reitman, over the years, has done a number of things, whether we're talking about beloved comedies like Stripes, or if we want to talk about, we'll go into the 90s, let's talk about Dave, or If you want to talk about Twins with Arnold and Danny, some great comedies. He also has handled some other types of topics. You know, he did Ghostbusters, which was leaning a little bit into that action, going into some sci-fi franchises. And he also did Draft Day. Yeah, it's kind of a weird one in his filmography. It's not great, it's not terrible, but it's not like basically anything he's ever done. And speaking of things that he's never done, we're going to talk about what he might actually be good for. The question is, in what franchise should Ivan Reitman direct an entry for? The idea behind this is based off of the types of films he's done. What do these two gentlemen think he would be perfect for a new entry from? And with that said, Chad, you are the one that is up first on this question. So I will go ahead and bring up the timer, and it will begin when you speak.
We know Ivan Reitman best as the director of classic films such as Stripes, Ghostbusters, Kindergarten Cop, and Dave. We see that he has a wide range from raunchy comedy to supernatural action comedy to sweet romance comedy. It seems like he can do it all. I think he also works best when he has an ensemble cast, like in Ghostbusters. This is why I'm pitching Ivan to direct an entry in the Hangover franchise. The Hangover movie started out well received and successful, making $500 million. People connected with them, but they quickly lost steam when they got to the third movie with diminishing returns. I think Ivan, along with a fresh young writer and a fun, funny cast, can breathe new life into this franchise and give audiences something they desperately crave after such a long time in quarantine. A good fucking time.
All right, I'll take that as a concession of time, and I'll skip forward the timer a little bit. Austin, when you speak, your time will begin.
Ivan Reitman is such an interesting director, and with such an interesting filmography, like you said, we've seen things like Ghostbusters or Twins, or even recently a movie I like in Draft Day. And yeah, he works great with ensembles. He works great with buddy movies, as we saw in Twins. I'm going to go to something that I think is in his wheelhouse, that suits his strengths the strongest in a world that is still ripe for exploring. And to me, that is the Men in Black franchise. And Men in Black franchise, which a lot of people still love, that's just had a few hiccups here and there, and I think it deserves a finale to the series so far. If he were to direct a fifth film, that I think it'd be right up his alley. The last movie just stumbled a little bit, mainly because it was miscast as far as a director with F. Gary Gray, who didn't know what to do with the comedy. He's not suited for that type of film. So I'm gonna talk about Men in Black, and I'm gonna pitch you an Ivan Wright directed Men in Black movie in my arguments.
All right, we'll go and let the time roll over. Chad, you can speak for 2 minutes when the time rolls.
The Hangover franchise lost its novelty pretty quickly with its sequels as they tried to make the same movie over and over in different locations. Many also felt that the franchise wasn't very progressive and hasn't aged well due to many sexist and homophobic jokes. However, a movie like Ghostbusters, which also features a group of guys, has aged much better. Ivan can give a sweeter and lighter touch than Todd Phillips and still give us a fun, edgy comedy. It doesn't have to be just a group of guys either. He can include actresses that are killing it in the comedy game these days, like Awkwafina and Adie Bryant. Maybe we can get a fun Sigourney Weaver, Bill Murray cameo. We've seen him work with a female screenwriter, too, when he directed No Strings Attached. Adie Bryant could help write the script like she did with her show Shrill, and include other talented comedians like Bo Burnham, Dan Levy, and Hannibal Buress. I think a lot of these actors could not only bring humor, but some emotional depth to the story. I also think these creative decisions can make this movie appeal to anybody and not just frat bros. Ivan Reitman said after the first two Ghostbusters, he didn't want to direct another one. So I feel like he doesn't really want to direct those kinds of big supernatural type movies. I think if he saw the most recent Men in Black bomb with fun and bankable stars, he wouldn't want to jump into that franchise. I also honestly just don't think Men in Black is that fun or relatable anymore. The creative team behind Men in Black International has made good movies. F. Gary Gray made The Fate of the Furious and Straight Outta Compton. People love those movies and they're generally well received. I really don't think the problem with that franchise was the creative team. They had another shot very recently to revitalize the Men in Black franchise and they failed. I don't think adding Ivan Reitman in there to give us yet another Men in Black so soon is a good idea. Whereas The Hangover hasn't been given yet another shot to be successful again. I think that's the movie we need right now, not another tired Men in Black film.
All right, I will take the silence as a concession of time. And I'll go ahead And I'll set it back a few seconds. All right, there we go. Perfect. Austin, your time will start when you begin speaking.
Men in Black is absolutely still a viable franchise where, like I said, there's a ton left to explore. And what we see in the franchise and what it's kind of all about is the things that are hidden amongst us in plain sight. So I'm going to pitch you a movie right now, directed by Ivan Reitman, called Men in Black Dimensions. And it's all about the hidden dimensions and the creatures and the things that are hidden amongst us in that we just can't see and can't interact with. And I think this would blend perfectly with Ivan Reitman because it would combine both an alien aspect and that when you hear people talk about aliens, we not so much UFOs, but this idea of interdimensional creatures. But it would give kind of a paranormal knack to it because if they suddenly appeared out of nowhere, we would think they were some kind of ghostly beings or whatever, even though that there was a explanation for it. So Men in Black Dimensions would be perfect, and you could have it either as an ensemble piece, bringing in everybody from the entire series, or you could get back to it being a buddy movie and just have Will Smith teaming up with Chris Hemsworth or teaming up with Tessa Thompson, sort of the younger group, or bring back everybody and have Tommy Lee Jones back, but put him in the role as the kind of director, the guy behind the scenes, because we don't need to see him doing action anymore. But I think when you do that, you blend well. You could have these things appear out of nowhere and do some sort of a invasion film. You set it back in New York, which is exactly what Ivan Reitman knows from Ghostbusters and where the Men in Black is primarily held. This franchise has a ton of juice left in it, and we saw that with Men in Black 3 after people kind of dismissed Men in Black 2. It went and did the sort of time travel aspect, but brought in Josh Brolin, did something fresh and new, and it revived the series again. And I don't think you can dismiss that. Like, you could easily bring back the franchise to prominence. You could get people excited with the news of Ivan Reitman. As far as The Hangover goes, it's a franchise that shouldn't be a franchise in the first place. It was a successful first movie that should have just been a standalone, as we saw with the complete retread that was the second one, doing the exact same movie, and then the third one going straight with like a weird, serious crime film. I mean, this thing needs to die a slow death out in the desert and be buried in a grave.
All right. Those all sound like fun things I'll do at my bachelor party. But right now we are going to go on to the 4-minute open debate. The timer will start once again when the first person speaks.
So am I getting it right? You were just essentially pitching like a female swap with The Hangover, because that didn't go so well with Ghostbusters. Speaking of Ghostbusters, and I don't think it's just a good idea. And people are sick of that franchise that shouldn't be a franchise. Chad, I don't understand your pick in this one.
I mean, I wasn't picking just female comedians. I was picking like a good group of people, just people. And, just funny people at that. So, because people right now, they want a good time. They want to laugh. I don't think they want to watch some weird movie they can't connect to about aliens. I mean, that's why people didn't go see Men in Black International that much, and the movie that you pitched sounded a lot like They Live or something, and I was just like, it just doesn't really, I don't think that's going to appeal to anybody. Whereas like a fucking baller movie where people go out and have a great time, have a lot of great character moments together. It just sounds like the more appealing movie for a lot of people right now who just want to go out and have a great time.
You're right. That sounds like a great movie, and it doesn't need the Hangover title in front of it. The Hangover title is something that doesn't need to be attached to that. You could make a movie like that. We've seen movies like that, like Girls Trip or something like that are successful. You don't need the Hangover stigma attached to it. That's went from being good when you mentioned the first one, and then you realize, oh yeah, they had 2 other movies that were horrible. Like, I don't want to buy this box set with 1 great movie and 2 pieces of garbage. Like, the Men in Black movie, people love Men in Black. Men in Black, I still ride the ride at Universal Studios, the Alien Attack. It's great. It's beloved. Like, the first one was smart. The third one was smart. See, the second one had its moments with the locker stuff. And, again, there's things all around us, the technology. There's all kinds of things you can still explore with this franchise. Ivan Reitman would eat it up with a spoon.
I don't think he would. He turned down a Ghostbusters 3. I don't think he likes to do those big, alien supernatural types of movies anymore. And honestly, I think every single time, they have like a few years and they go Men in Black and people don't want it. And then they give Men in Black, people don't want it. And then they just keep, I don't want that. I mean, if Men in Black 3 was so damn good and so successful, maybe they would have come out with another one more, more soon after that, with like the same characters. Instead, they were like, oh no, shit, this isn't working. We have to redo it. Oh shit, this isn't working. Why would they redo this movie? So, and the titles sounds kind of dumb to me too. Like, what did you say? Dimensions? Men in Black. Like, why does that
interdimensional creatures? Because interdimensional creatures. It's because it's something that the Men in Black have not dealt with before. That could involve aliens, but aliens they haven't thought about dealing with. It's something fresh that still involves the same concept. And it's funny you mentioned Ivan Reitman not wanting to do those big budget things anymore. When Ghostbusters 3 was originally pitched in 1998, and then in 2001 he did Evolution, which is a really underrated movie about an alien creature, and it's a big budget.
Exactly.
Movie. Interested in that kind of stuff. Yes, and it's an underrated movie. It's really good. Yeah, and
he tried it. Not a lot of people liked it.
Your argument was he didn't want to do anything after trying Ghostbusters 3, and then he did that. That completely negates your argument, what you just said.
Okay, well then you say
things like
he did Evolution. Say he was ambivalent. He was like, I don't know, guys, should I? And then he did Evolution. He was like, okay, well, no, it's underrated because no one really wanted to see that fucking movie. And then he's like, all right, well, now I'm definitely not doing a movie like that again. And he hasn't. So, I don't think he would want to. And as far as the Hangover point, I think that's just a brilliant, because the first one was so funny. It's a little dated with the jokes, but I think if you bring in the fresh jokes, that concept is really cool. I just love how, they have people go to a central location and then they wake up and crazy shit starts happening. I mean, why do an original thing when you can take this concept and revamp it? I mean, that's what people are doing in Hollywood. Why not The Hangover?
Yeah, and why not Men in Black, which people still have love for, and there's still a complete world to explore, because bringing this franchise back to prominence would put Ivan Reitman. He wants to go out on a high. Like, I know deep down he has a passion for these subjects. He would love to go out on a high note, not go out on draft day. Yeah, absolutely. He's producing the new Ghostbusters.
I'm sure he wants to go with something big, but I don't think it's producing that. I think it would be the Hangover.
He has a passion for it.
It's going to be time. That is time. I did say this would be something, didn't I, people? All right, Chad, you are up first for the closing 1 minute on the clock. Time starts when you speak.
Look, I think, when he's made such great, different kinds of movies like Dave, and just and Ghostbusters, just if you tone it down and don't bring in the supernatural stuff, I think he can have a lot of great character moments. I think if you try to do this Men in Black dimension, it sounds like Independence Day 2 kind of or something like that. And it's nobody's going to want to go see that shit because they were like, oh, remember the last Men in Black? I just don't think that he wants to do it. I don't think he would be excited about it. I think if he could get some really good writers and some really good cast to have this baller fucking hangout movie, I think he would really be excited about it, and he would write some really fun jokes. And the 2016 Ghostbusters didn't work because it just wasn't the same type of humor, and a lot of people didn't want that attached to their own property. And I think that, Ivan Reitman bringing the humor from the first Ghostbusters to a Hangover movie is great because, Men in Black's fun, but I just don't remember, it being that funny. So I think The Hangover is more suited to an Ivan Reitman style.
And that is time. Austin, you have the final minute on the clock. The time will start when you speak.
Reitman works best when his comedies have sort of a gimmick attached to them. That's what he's passionate about. We remember Ivan Reitman best for Ghostbusters for a reason. He has movies like Evolution that have a cult following. Twins has a gimmick to it. When he does a straight comedy with nothing really, no kind of pizzazz to it, like Father's Day with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, it's boring and kind of dull. And same thing with No Strings Attached, which was usurped by Friends with Benefits the same year. So, and to say he doesn't have a passion for the subject is ludicrous. He's literally producing and co-writing the new Ghostbusters Afterlife, and he's promoting the hell out of it right now. So to say he doesn't have a passion for the subject still, even at 74, is absolutely ridiculous. Look, The Hangover has a stigma way worse than Men in Black. And if you put The Hangover title title in front of one of these things, and they're going to go, man, they're making another one of those? Like, I remember how unfunny that third one is. Man, I don't want to see that garbage. Like, are they just going to do the same thing again and again and again? You can do it without the Hangover title in front of it.
And that will be time on the argument. Another great one, guys. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you to the back, and I will bring our judges back on the screen. I was going to say, between both rounds, the gentleman did very well in terms of having to fact check anything. It's been a very clean fight up until that last second. The only fact check so far is Ivan Reitman is the producer of the new Ghostbusters. However, he had no hand in writing it. It is written by his son, Jason Reitman, and collaborator Gil Keenan, who people may remember from the 2006 animated film Monster House, as well as the 2015, I want to say, remake of Poltergeist. Remember him more for the first one than the second one. With that said, though, I still think personally the biggest loss for the Men in Black franchise was when they didn't do the supposed MIB 23, which was the idea of taking Will Smith from Men in Black and crossing him over with the Jump Street guys. Now that would have been some fucking funny shit. Yeah. But we didn't get that, and that wasn't here in the argument, so let's not take it into account. Mr. Tato, I head to you first. Who sold you more and what sold you?
Chad got me on this one, and it was like I was with him on the Ivan Reitman doesn't want to do the super thing, and then Pez came back hard on that one, so it ended up close. But in my opinion, Chad kind of won the evolution argument, and that was the tilting point. It was a beautiful debate.
All right, JD, I go to you. As concise as you can hit it for me. Who sold you on their win?
I went in the opposite direction because I think I went Pez because I think he accurately portrayed the stigma that comes with the Hangover franchise, as well as I think Chad shot himself in the foot when he said, well, it sounds like his pitch is their version of the Men in Black version of Day Live. That sounds awesome. Sorry. So yeah, I went with Pez.
Fair enough. He said it in the argument. That's how you interpreted it. Good enough for me. Mr. Peck, I head to you. As concise as you can hit it. Who won it for you, and what was the point that sold you on the win?
I'll keep it short. My point goes to Pez also because he brought up, basically JD put this out there, I was about to say on there though. He put up a sort of a concept and idea for him taking over Ghostbusters will be though, and basically interdimensional stuff, and more of a sort of a plot and an idea of what he can do with the franchise. But I feel like with Chadwick though, you're just basically with the idea of it, and even you shot yourself in the foot, but not the same reason that JD pointed out. You also kind of shot yourself in the foot and mentioned like some of the Hangover stuff, are basically, and some of the jokes on my hair just maybe felt a little dead though. Like even Ivan's comedies, both very funny comedies and very well rounded, and even some of his early comedies, like some of the jokes that might not a little age well. Even that's I was sort of leaning onto, and some basic ideas. I felt like I didn't have a more of a concept, a plot of an idea, sort of on Chadwick's part. So I would give my point to Pass.
All right, judges, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and send you to the back as we bring back in our competitors. And we move on to round number 3 in what has been a very, very close fight. That was a great debate, gentlemen, very seriously. But we move on to question number 3, which simply is, what is the best horror film released in the 1980s? A decade for many great horror films, a decade in which we saw many of the great horror franchises begin. We also saw some incredible one-offs that have probably been remade pretty poorly since then. It's a great recollection of films, and these gentlemen picked 2 of the very best at the least. I'd say arguably both of these are at least top 10 if we're putting a definitive list together, but they got to fight for why they're the best. And so with that, I will bring up your timer. Mr. Howell, you are up first, so time will start when you begin speaking.
I know I'm human. And if you were all these things, then you just attacked me right now. So some of you are still human. The thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. No one left to kill it. And then it's won. My pick for the best horror of the 80s, Thing is King. That's John Carpenter's The Thing at the height of his powers in 1982, coming off of Halloween, The Fog, and Escape from New York. It is absolutely his masterpiece. It is a masterpiece of thrills, horror, science fiction. It succeeds in so many different realms. It succeeds as a horror movie. It succeeds as a science fiction. And in a rarity, it succeeds as a remake. And it improves on everything that the original does, which is what a great remake should do, is take a light premise that maybe wasn't fulfilled at first and absolutely taking it to a whole nother level and doing something fresh. The Thing is my pick, John Carpenter's magnum opus.
All right, Chad, I'll pause it for a brief minute, or a brief second, not a minute, that'd be a little long, but time will start when you begin speaking.
All right. Before 1984, you had Michael Myers, you had Jason Voorhees, and The Thing, but you didn't have a menacing horror icon with a personality dedicated to striking terror into the hearts of his victims. This guy didn't just want to kill his victims, he wanted to toy with them, violate them, make sure they are good and terrified before he kills them. You didn't have a horror film that would combine phenomenal practical effects, a terrifying villain, a badass female protagonist, a creepy score, and a concept that hits people where they live. Not until Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie makes people everywhere fear the one thing that every living creature must do: sleep. We've all had nightmares, and upon waking, we are so relieved that the nightmare's over. But this movie says, what if it's not? A Nightmare on Elm Street put New Line Cinema on the map, spawned 7 sequels, a remake, TV show. People dress like Freddy Krueger at cons, and there's a multitude of merchandising. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a pop culture phenomenon, and the best horror film of the 1980s.
All right, and that'll be the argument. Pez, I can pause it for you for 1 second as well. Time will start when you begin speaking.
One of the things The Thing does best is it creates a problem of two different threats in it. And it's one of the best versions of horror, and that's paranoia horror combined with creature horror. Not only are these guys plagued with cabin fever and isolated in this Arctic tundra, but they are fighting against each other once this thing is on the loose. Once they figure out that it can imitate everybody, they start turning on each other. It's multiple threats coming, just ratcheting up the tension. You get the tension from this movie from the opening scene with the Ennio Morricone great score of the thumping, thump, 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 and you see this helicopter shooting at a dog. You're immediately sucked in and engaged, wondering what the hell is going on here. And from there, it just goes off 100 miles an hour. This movie has star power. You've got Kurt Russell, peak 80s badass Kurt Russell as McCready leading this gang on this Arctic group. You got great character actors. You got Keith David. You got Bill Lancaster, David Clement, Wilford Brimley, Mr. Diabetes himself. Wonderful, wonderful ensemble. You got great Carpenter direction. Rob Bottin's creature effects still hold up 40 years later. Just some of the most innovative, creative creatures you've ever seen. The multi-headed dog, the spider head, the torso that opens up, the melting faces. Come on, this movie has dudes shooting things with flamethrowers, which is what more could you want in a badass horror movie? People blowing stuff up with dynamite. You got great catchphrases. Yeah, well, fuck you too. This movie hits on all cylinders. I find hardly any flaws with John Carpenter's The Thing. It is the ultimate in science fiction terror. Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not going to try to argue that it's a bad movie, but it's an inferior film. It's a film that, sure, Freddy is unleashed, but my argument is that this formula was done way better in some of the sequels, including what Wes Craven did himself with New Nightmare in 1994, and in Dream Warriors, which expanded the mythology and just did it better. The movie we got in 1984 feels dated, it feels cheap, and it has horrific endings, horrific acting, a multitude of reasons we'll get into.
All right, and that'll be time. Chad, back to you when you speak.
A Nightmare on Elm Street is extremely well-paced with scares throughout. Some of the images in this film are the most iconic and terrifying in cinema. They made this movie on a super small budget. It could have ended up a B horror movie, but instead it made $57 million at the box office and is lauded by critics with 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. They put care and effort into this movie. They made real revolving sets like Inception to film the blood bed and the ceiling deaths. More than just technical brilliance, the movie just has an amazing story. Nancy Thompson, one of the greatest final girls in horror film history, must fight her natural instinct to sleep in order to reverse the sins of her parents. The people who should protect her, like her parents and her friends, try and convince her to get some rest, the absolute worst thing she could do. With everybody thinking she's gone insane, Nancy has the resolve to know that what she's seeing is real and it must be stopped. She doesn't crumble under pressure and make dumb decisions like so many other horror victims. She sets up traps like a horror Kevin McAllister and then realizes her true power is turning her back on her fear and overcoming it once and for all. The beauty of this movie, too, is how it plays with the contrast between waking life and dreams. Freddy is truly terrifying because he can make things seem normal and convince you everything is fine and then pop out at you. When Tina says it was only a dream, I say, was it? The Thing is a good movie with some really good practical effects. The problem, though, is it favors special effects over character and story, and it's not very relatable. How often do you find yourself stuck in Antarctica fighting against an alien? Nightmare is more of an original story, too, whereas The Thing is a remake of a 1950s film and very similar to other films such as The Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien. Most people would also point to Halloween as Carpenter's career-defining work and not The Thing.
I'm going to take that as a concession. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump forward a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and click from here. When it rolls around, the first person can speak.
I'll let you go first, Chad. I've gone first the last 2 times.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with this, you actually have... Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. My point still stands. You go first.
Yeah, you can start a second early. Go ahead.
With A Nightmare on Elm Street, you actually have like a, actor playing the villain, and it's, he brings so much menacing, physicality to this. They tried to use like a different actor with it, and it didn't work. And so you actually have, great acting in Nightmare on Elm Street. And I feel like, with The Thing, you have some pretty good acting. I mean, Kurt Russell is pretty good usually, but like really, even though you have a lot of these great character actors, like you said, they're really just like underused. They all seem like the same guy. They really don't have any good character moments where they just have like a good conversation or anything like that.
Heather Langenkamp is far from a good actor, and the problem with Nightmare on Elm Street is it kills off the far more interesting character and the better actress in Amanda Wyss as Tina in the first 20 minutes, who's much more interesting in what she's been dealing with Freddy from the beginning. You kill her off, you pivot over to Nancy, who is just a dull, lifeless final girl the acting is horrendous all around. I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. Absolutely cornball, over the top nonsense. I'm sorry.
No, that's fucking
Robert
amazing.
Englund takes it way too seriously. Absolutely not. That is cornball nonsense.
Well,
I would much rather face Freddy in the dream world than face all the people coming at me, like not knowing who to trust to me, and facing this creature is much scarier than facing a dude in a hat in a boiler room. I'm sorry. At least I know what I'm fighting.
No, because you can't.
No,
you actually don't, because you can't even tell the difference between waking life and dreams. But in The Thing, all you had to do to avoid The Thing was fucking just have a buddy system. They don't do that. No, because there's bad writing, and there's like,
you can't have a buddy system, because even if the buddies go off, then when they come back to the bigger group, they don't trust them, and they say, we don't know where both of you guys have been, because you can have more than one person possessed at the same time. I mean, come on. You can't tell the difference between the dream. You can't tell the difference between just waking up randomly in the middle of school, or being in a boiler room, or being outside of a spooky house in some alley when you just went to sleep. Come on, that's a complete. You're in a dream. I mean, that's absolutely absurd. And her beating him with 1940s booby traps. What is the next thing she's gonna?
But no, you
put him on a
can't
whoopee
ever
cushion?
tell the difference, because Freddy has ultimate control. He can make everything look like you're real, and then he'll come and get you. And that's like one of the most terrifying
except
things.
For the goats out front. Yeah, no, that's completely normal. It's the goats and the children, jumping ropes.
Because we have things like sleep paralysis that has said to have supernatural effects. So it plays right in that. There's been actual reports that Wes Craven wrote this story from, of a kid afraid of his fucking nightmares, and he did the same exact things that Nancy does, where she has coffee right by the bed. So it's just like really taking real life and adapting it. I mean, that's just so outlandish.
Your movie has one of the worst endings in a horror movie, a completely tacked on studio ending with the mom getting a complete mannequin dummy literally getting pulled through a door.
I think that looks really creepy.
Defeating Freddy by turning her back on him and saying, "I don't believe you." You turn your back on that creature and the thing, and it's going to suck your brains out. You understand?
So you're going to turn your back on that. Thing from the other debate.
Don't turn your back. Yeah, don't turn your back on him because
that's a fucking dumb line. Ever since that other debate, that was a dumb line that worked. Line.
Yeah, dumb line that got me to win.
It worked on some people. It doesn't work on me. Heather Langenkamp fucking crushes this. She has like a great character arc. She starts absolutely fucking terrified because you have this thing. People are saying, "Oh, I had that same dream," and I'm gonna, I get attacked in my dream, and then her friend fucking dies, and then she doesn't know why, and then she has to get explained to this by her parents, like, when it's almost too late, and all of her friends are dying, and then she has to, rise above this, and she actively has her parents and everybody going against her, trying to stop her from, not going to sleep. And she's like, "No, I'm on my own with this one." I think she's fucking brilliant in that movie.
She's a horrendous actor.
And that will be the last word on the open debate. We're going to go ahead and go to the 1 minute closings. Pez, you're up first. Time starts when you speak.
Look, Nightmare has horrific effects. Literally, you've got the stretching arm thing where you can pretty much see the straps holding it up. It's absolutely awful. I mentioned the mannequin getting pulled through the window at the end. Absolutely atrocious. You can definitely tell the difference between the dream sequences and the real life sequences. You have somebody like Johnny Depp in that movie who's completely wasted, who's not a star yet. My movie has all very competent character actors who know exactly how to stand out. Everybody in that movie gets a character moment. And like I said, that ending in that movie is horrendous, and it kills off the best character 20 minutes in. The Thing, on the other hand, just works on every level from start to finish. It has a satisfying ending where Kurt Russell blows up and defeats the creature, but while still facing a threat from Childs, but having a hopeless, the ultimate sacrifice that Kurt Russell knows he's going to die out in this Arctic tundra, but he also knows he saved the Earth from this creature and saved the Earth from basically a potential apocalypse. It's actually a standalone film. It wasn't made just to create a franchise and to create a character, and that's why it's so beloved nearly 40 years later.
All right, and that is time on the argument. Chad, you have the final minute. It starts when you speak.
A Nightmare on Elm Street was not made to have sequels. It was just so fucking good with the greatest villain in horror history that people wanted to rush out and make more of these because people wanted more. Nobody wanted The Thing when it came out. Roger Ebert even panned this. This is where I got the points about, special effects being primary, character and story being secondary. Kurt Russell is okay in this movie, but like everybody else just feels so bland and the same. Whereas you have the great, you talk about Tina, being the better character. I think it's fucking brilliant that they had Tina act as the protagonist, and then it pivots to Nancy, and then she's the badass. It basically, you look in your closet, right, and you see a sweater that's like, the same design as the Freddy Krueger sweater. It's gonna fucking terrify you. No one's looking around the corner for a weird little spider head, basically they also use some great fucking innovative techniques where the sweater is supposed to hurt your eyes. The score is fucking, I'm done.
And that is time. All right, guys. Another great, passionate argument. You guys are really bringing it tonight. I'm going to go ahead and send you both to the back to cool off as I bring our judges back in. And Mr. Domash, I go to you first. As concise as you can hit it for me, who gets your point and what sold you?
Can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm giving my point to Chad. It's two reasons, really. Number one, he made a point that was never really countered, which was that The Thing is not really that intimidating for a villain. I'm rewording it slightly, but he was basically saying that, like, it's basically all you have to do is walk away from it, and then, like, you're safe. So I kind of interpreted that a certain way. But then also, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street. Based on his arguments, that's the movie I want to see because it could actually be the best movie of the 80s.
All right, Jonathan, I go to you as concise as you can hit it. Who sold you for the point?
Unlike JD, I have seen both of these movies, by the way. And also, based on the arguments, I'm actually going the same as JD's. I'm actually giving my point to Chad because he pointed out why Nightmare is basically based on the story structure, when Freddy Krueger looked, and basically the menace and terror factor right here. And he mentioned the character development. Sorry, can't remember her name, but her name basically throughout the beginning and the end of the movie. I was kind of waiting for basically when Pat's point of me waiting for sort of Kurt Russell's arc around here based on the character, and also Chad pointed out that basically more knock on him basically focus on special effects as the line first than story. With his, I think he did like the opposite approach. So I'm actually going to give my point to Chad.
All right. So with that, I will go ahead and send my great judges to the back. Thank you so much, guys, as I bring our competitors back in, and we will move on to round number 4. And with this one, we're going to focus on a specific franchise, and that is the Wizarding World, or for those of you who hate the other two, the Harry Potter franchise. And this is a franchise that many people have joked has basically the entire country of England in it. Over the course of 10 films, if you are an actor that holds a British or Irish citizenship, you probably got an invite to be a part of these films, because seriously, like everyone you can think of is a part of this cast. And when you have a franchise that has that many great actors in it, it inevitably leads to some of the best performances within a blockbuster franchise. I don't think anyone would argue that point overall. However, we are arguing the specific performance from this franchise. The question on the table is, what is the best performance by an actor in the Wizarding World franchise? And the limiter on this was, if the character appears in more than one film, the performance was limited to focusing on specifically one film. They have to focus their arguments on one film and why that actor's performance within that film is the best given in the entirety of the franchise. So with the parameters of the question set, Mr. Webb, you are up first on this one, so I will go ahead and bring back in the timer, and it will start when you begin speaking.
Throughout the Harry Potter saga, we've had many great performances, but none have been as consistently good as the performances by Alan Rickman as Severus Snape throughout the series. His performance in Deathly Hallows Part 2 is a culmination and a step above everything he did prior in those movies, and better than every other performance in any Wizarding World film. In this film, you get to see both sides of Severus Snape, the disguise and the vulnerable, caring man he truly is. Alan Rickman's speech in the Great Hall and the way he speaks to Lord Voldemort have us fully convinced that he's on Voldemort's side. But then you get to see the vulnerable, loving side you've been waiting for since you started the franchise, and you didn't even know it. I can't watch some of the scenes without tearing up. Even just watching the scenes for debate prep had me grabbing tissues. The layered performance we get from the late, great Alan Rickman is definitely one for the ages, and definitely one that should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards.
All right, calling out the Academy there. Austin, when the clock rolls, you can begin your 1-minute opening.
I did my waiting. 12 years of it. My pick for this one is Gary Oldman in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and the reason I picked that is because of actually through the movie the limited amount of time he has to create a character in that film with only a few minutes of screen time, much like something you see in a Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. He makes the most of every single line, of every single scene, of every single interaction, and that's to me why it's the bigger challenge. You have to immediately connect to the audience, bringing in this character that's beloved from the books, and depict somebody like Gary Oldman, who's so diverse and so multi-layered, and who can play damn near just about anything. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. That to have him do it and bring such a nuance to the role and bring something maybe that was even unexpected for the fans, I think is the real achievement here. So my pick is Gary Oldman in Prisoner of Azkaban.
All right, and as we come up on the end of the argument, I will give it a just 1 second pause, but Chad, when you speak, the time will begin.
At the beginning of Deathly Hallows Part 2, Snape is headmaster of Hogwarts, and he gives this slow, meticulous speech with the signature pace of speaking. The way he delivers lines in this part of the movie is just so creepy and menacing. You can tell why not many students would rebel against him, and why he would be so trusted within the Death Eater cult and by Lord Voldemort himself. Rickman is sacrificed by Voldemort and lays dying, having given everything he has to the cause to protect Lily's only son. Harry kneels down and Snape asks him to take his tears. And then his last request is to see Harry's eyes. And that's when you realize it was all an act this whole time, and he had always been protecting Harry. It changes the context of the entire series. When he says, "You have your mother's eyes," knowing what he lost, it's devastating. Then when we get to the always line, after he reveals to Dumbledore his true feelings and pleading to save Lily's life, it's a double dose of emotion. No other actor could have given us this caliber of Snape. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman. I think Gary Oldman gives a better performance as Sirius Black in Order of the Phoenix. He's a presence in that movie that gives Harry the father figure he desperately needed, with some expertly performed lines. You get to see him fighting with Harry, which was cool to see Oldman doing action alongside his godson. Definitely a step up from his performance in Azkaban. Oldman does little in Azkaban to sell us on him embodying Sirius Black. He mostly just screams lines like, "I did my waiting," which is pretty good writing, but Oldman doesn't add much to what was written in the book. It's honestly a bit of overacting to me, while David Thewlis pulls a lot of the legwork in that scene. Anybody could have given the same performance in Azkaban, but not in Order of the Phoenix. I think you chose the wrong movie to argue for Gary Oldman. Even still, neither of them come close to the gravitas Alan Rickman has as Severus Snape in Deathly Hallows Part 2. Just with 2 lines, he's able to make you feel a lifetime's worth of pain. You say that Gary Oldman had the bigger challenge? Sure, but he kind of failed that challenge. It's a better movie than the performance.
All right, and I will take the silence as a concession of time. All right, just because I jumped it ahead, I will pause it and count 10 seconds manually, but Pez, when you speak, your time will begin.
Gary Oldman does have the bigger challenge in Prisoner of Azkaban because he's got that limited time. He kind of comes out of nowhere. He comes in like a house of fire an hour and a half into a movie when you're already rolling, you're already invested, you're already on a high from what the movie's doing. And then he comes barreling in and just completely commands your attention with every single line. Like I said, he has to make the most of every single minute, every single second, really, of screen time. He comes in, he's unhinged, but he's also focused. There's a chilliness to his delivery, especially of the Dark Times line that he talks about to Harry. He has to convey the fact, and one of the reasons it's also a bigger challenge is that he's sort of playing this what you think is a bad guy, but also a good guy, very similar to Snape. The only difference is Alan Rickman has had 7 movies to kind of develop this. Gary Oldman has the challenge where he has to convey 12 years of what he's gone through in this very limited amount of time. We've seen literally every piece of Snape's character and what he's done over these 7, so it's not a surprise when in Deathly Hallows Part 2 when he conveys the emotion that he conveys. You said that he's creepy and menacing, but that's nothing new for Snape, and that's nothing new for Rickman. That's what he does best. That's what he always does. Gary Oldman can be chilling, but he also has this command of the scenery. He commands authority over Snape in their brief encounter. He can be calm, but also serious when he's guiding Harry and talking about, if you ever needed a home, you could come stay with me. I mean, you get so much stuff in this sort of brief bits of exposition, but the way he conveys it is what really makes it what it is as far as the intrigue, and you just want to see more, which is why when we got to the Order of the Phoenix, people were clamoring for him to come back because he did such a good job in that one. And that's the crux of my argument, is that you have to make people want to see more. There's a reason why stuff like Hannibal Lecter, people, they did those movies again and put them in more because they wanted to see more. When you get just a little chunk, it grabs you, and you want to see what more this actor and this character can do.
All right, and that is going to be time. We will go on to the 4-minute open debate. That time will start when the first person speaks.
After you, sir.
J.K. Rowling revealed to Alan Rickman very early on, but I think before the fourth book was came out or after, and she said, I'm not telling anyone else this, but this is how your character ends. And I think having all of that time to think and understand where his character is going and understand everything that underlines it, it does inform a lot of the previous work, but especially in Deathly Hallows Part 2. And I don't even think you need all of the performances before that to see the arc of Snape. All you need to do is see it in that movie where, it's like a performance within a performance where he's this guy, that the Death Eaters and Lord Voldemort want to see. And then when he reveals it, holy shit. He gets Harry's attention. He gets everybody's attention.
It's revealed. A lot of it's revealed in almost like a montage, which I think is kind of a cheat. I mean, especially in that movie where I think more of the emotion
montage.
the emotion that comes from that scene is not necessarily from Rickman's performance. It's from the music that's swelling. It's from the editing. It's from the way the whole thing is put together. And it's from you thinking about the previous films. And again, he's had those movies to kind of break that out. And why Oldman is the bigger triumph in my mind is what he does with 6 minutes of screen time just makes you want to dig into that character. The intrigue is just so much there. He subverts your expectations of Sirius coming off the book, and he takes it in a whole new direction that keeps you off guard.
When I'm watching Alan Rickman act in this fucking thing, I'm not paying attention to the music, nothing else. I'm paying attention to Alan Rickman when he's bearing his fucking soul out to Dumbledore, like, you need to save her. And then the always line is just one of the most brilliant lines that everyone connects to, because it's like you have this deep love that you will never, it's a fucking tragic story, and he sells me on it so hard. With Gary Oldman, you say that the music and everything aids his performance, whatever. But Gary Oldman in, Azkaban, Alfonso Cuarón directed this. He's an auteur as well, and he's like making this. Yeah, his direction is probably what aided. But honestly, I think that David Thewlis comes in and commands this even more. I think it's a more of a shared.
Oldman absolutely steals the scene from all those great actors that are in that scene. He even upends Alan Rickman in that same scene. He commands authority over. He's not scared of Snape. He knows exactly. He's got this pent up aggression. He's got this. You can feel it even just from that delivery of the. It's not just yelling. To say it's just yelling is an insult to people who do this kind of acting. The way he delivers I did my waiting 12 years ago. There's a presence to that. There's a backstory to that.
I think I might be able to know how to do that
one thing. It's not. It's absolutely not. And one of the things that Gary Oldman does best is he elevates the people around him, much like when in the scenes with Daniel Radcliffe is some of his best work, because a high tide raises all ships, and he elevates the people around him in those scenes.
If you wanted to pick a really fucking great Gary Oldman movie, you really should have picked Order of the Phoenix, because
he's completely flat in that movie. He's completely flat in that movie, which is why I didn't pick it.
He just has this fatherly presence, with the overacting in Azkaban. Sometimes it's the more subtle approaches that are the much better performances. When he comes in, and just like the look and smile of seeing Harry again in Order of the Phoenix is just so fucking great. But with Alan Rickman, all he needs to do is say one line with a look. It's much better than anything in Azkaban as far as Gary Oldman is concerned.
The stuff when he says Deathly Hallows Part 2 kind of comes out of nowhere. It kind of comes out of nowhere. He's been a dick to Harry the entire movie, and then he does.
It was
an act. He's been a dick to Harry the whole time, and then all of a sudden, Harry completely buys into all this. The waterworks.
You know why?
I'm not completely sold on that. Just from seeing that little chunk of it.
You have your mother's eyes, and it's just so fucking brilliant. That's all he needs to say. And he's won everybody over.
Well, at least they know how to do that part right. Great open debate, guys. Really was a good one. We'll go to the 1 minute closing I made Pez smile. I know he's smaller now, but I finally did it. Chad, you're up first. 1 minute on the clock to close. Time starts when you speak.
Alan Rickman in Deathly Hallows Part 2 has basically just as much screen time as Gary Oldman in Azkaban, but you get to see two different parts of Snape. You get to see his disguise that he's holding away from everybody, and then you have the brilliant emotional side that he's hidden from everybody this whole time. And when he unleashes it, I dare you to just watch those scenes and not just feel something. And that's what it gets when Gary Oldman in Azkaban is just, saying, I did my waiting. It's just, it's a fun meme, but it's not, gravitas like you see with Alan Rickman. I feel like I don't agree with the point that he raises everybody else. I think that's an insult to David Thewlis. I think David Thewlis was the great, phenomenal father figure for Harry in that whole movie, and he did that so great. And everybody talks about Azkaban. I only hear David Thewlis was fucking brilliant in that movie. I don't hear Gary Oldman. I like Gary Oldman in Order of the Azkaban or Order of the Phoenix more.
And that is time. Austin, I move over to you for the last minute. Time starts when you speak.
The great thing about Gary Oldman's performance is that he brings a human element to this character that in the books was way more over the top and psychotic. And the fact that he can play both ways, that he can be that in those moments, but also bring it down and be kind of humbled and connect with the people around him is the greater acting challenge to me. I feel like he has an uphill battle coming into a third movie when you already have these established characters who have already had their backstories told on screen. Alan Rickman has this base of 7 movies to work off of so that, when he gets to those scenes, he knows where he's coming from. Gary Oldman's coming into it cold, and he has to convey all of this stuff in a matter of minutes, in a matter of a few lines. It's a much bigger challenge than Rickman working off of what he's been doing the entire time, and he's been menacing the whole time. And the fact that he just has this turn right there at the end, it's hard to buy. And again, I think the music and the editing really helps that more so than the actual performance. It's more the filmmaking than the acting to me in Deathly Hallows Part 2.
All right, and that will be time on another great argument between these two gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead and sit you on the back as we will bring in our judging panel for this one. And Mr. Peck, you are up first. As concise as you can hit it, what point sold you on a winner for your vote?
I had to get my slight smidge edge to Pez because he pointed out some few tiny details that what made Gary Oldman's performance as Sirius Black in Prisoner of Azkaban more rounded and more elevated that majority of the film than what it is. So I'll actually give my point to Pez.
All right, so Austin will get the first vote. Jake, I go to you. Who does your vote go to, and what sold you?
Chad. JD, go.
I also gave it to Chad. I just think a lot of the time Pez was arguing what was the biggest challenge, what was not well, I think Chad was always arguing what was the best performance. So that's why I give my point to Chad. I'm done.
Well, all right. That was the quickest we've ever done it. Well done, boys. You've set a record and made me proud. We'll go ahead and send you to the back. As your job is not yet done, I bring in Mr. Howell. I bring in Chadwick Webb. And boy, was I right. Again, 4 great debates.
That's just fun.
We are not yet done here. We're
putting on a show for the people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wouldn't expect less from you guys. We are at a score of 2 of 2, which means we are going to go into the blind round. Here's how the blind round works. The competitors will receive a generalization of a question. Now, it should be said this is a question that they have no warning in advance of. They have no idea where this is going, and it's not based off anything indicative related to the competitors. It is a randomly assigned question. They will first receive a generalization. The example I've used in the past is name me a Will Smith film. They will name me a movie based off the generalization. After that, we will give them the very specific question that they will have to answer. Whether or not they 100% agree that their answer given matches the question, they will have to fight for it. Once that's over, we will give them a few minutes of time to go and prep their argument, and then they will come back and we will proceed. The debate happens the same as a regular debate does in terms of time. With that said, I will go first to Austin. Sir, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
And Chad, are you ready?
Let's see what happens, yeah.
All right, gentlemen. So your question for the blind round, well, to get your answer at least,
right,
is I want you to name me a movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. I'm going to ask for clarification just because I heard a bit of a buzz come out on my end. I heard Guardians of the, is it Galaxy 1 or 2?
1.
1. Okay. Guardians of the Galaxy. Austin?
Give me just a second.
No, of course.
Excuse me.
Avengers Endgame.
Avengers Endgame. All right. And it should be said to everyone, because by the time this does upload, I believe Eternals will be out in theaters. At the time of recording, Eternals has not yet been released, so that was not an option. Doesn't factor in, though, because we have Guardians of the Galaxy versus Avengers Endgame. And gentlemen, I will say this is one of the few times where I think the choices really worked out for you. Your question is, what is the best entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So that is the question. So at this point, it will be only a matter of seconds for those of you on screen. But these gentlemen are going to get a couple of minutes to go ahead and put their arguments together. And then we will be back to have our blind round fight. We'll see you in just a minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. These guys have had a couple of minutes to get some notes together, get some prep together. Although for once, the blind round hasn't absolutely fucked them over. So, you know, this one wasn't probably the worst you could prep for. The question is, what is the best entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Mr. Webb picked Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1, for those of you who are anal about it. Austin picked Avengers Endgame Volume 4, for those of you who are anal about it. And Chad, because you answered first, you are going to be going first in our blind round. So with that, I will go ahead and bring up your timer. Gentlemen, this has been a great debate, one way or the other. I wish you the best of luck. And Chad, your time will start as soon as you speak.
In 2014, when Guardians was coming out, people were wondering what they were going to do with this. It was like so hyped because they were like, you know, they're going to use these like weird like characters no one's ever heard before. There's like a raccoon and a tree. What is this? It had a huge challenge against it because, you know, basically they had to see if this would work. And it did in a fucking landslide. It made about the third of what Avengers Endgame did. And that's just fucking saying something for what it was, because, you know, it comes in at just over 2 hours in runtime. It's just such a fucking solid movie. And you have, like, you know, all these great actors like Zoe Saldana and Chris Pratt. And, you know, you can have the focus that's on them. And I just, you know, I feel like, you know, with the fucking soundtrack, you can go out and buy the soundtrack for this, and it's fantastic. And it won more awards than, you know, the other choice, Avengers Endgame. So I just think this is a fucking solid movie that had a huge challenge.
All right, and that will be time. Austin, I head over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah, my pick is Avengers Endgame, literally the culmination of everything that every MCU movie had been leading up to. You get incredible payoffs that you've been waiting for years and years and years. You get fist pumping, amazing moments. You get, Cap wielding Thor's hammer. You get Scarlet Witch confronting Thanos. You get the incredible sacrifice of Iron Man. You get everybody coming out of the portals. One of the best fight scenes, literally the entire MCU. You get an amazing evolution of the Thor character. Just everything you could want in a Marvel movie is exactly what this is. It's epic. It's action packed. It's got a great story. It's just payoffs left and right. Great character moments. The stuff, Back to the Future 2 type stuff, is a lot of fun. You just get a movie that delights in every way, that pays off in every way, and it's a movie that's just, you go back to more and more often than Guardians of the Galaxy, which, to be fair, is a solid movie. But once you've seen it a couple of times, the jokes just don't hit as much anymore. You get great moments that you can go back to in Avengers Endgame again and again.
All right, and that will be time on the opening minute. We move on to 2 minutes. Chad, when you speak.
You would think when they go back in time, why wouldn't they just off Thanos as a child? I mean, they could have done so much different with this movie, and I just feel like, it's so bloated. There's so much in this movie that it's so long. You have to take how many pee breaks during this movie? With Guardians, it's like such a great runtime for this kind of movie. It has the better soundtrack. It was nominated for Best Visual Effects and Best Hairstyle and Makeup. And, Endgame was only nominated for Best Visual Effects. And I just don't, think that, and also the thing about it is, I think making it time travel was kind of a mistake. I think that was a really dumb move. It's so convoluted. It doesn't make any sense. I also think Endgame did a very tragic thing here, a very vital mistake where they betrayed Black Widow's character. They had a moment where they could have had, it was I'm going to die. No, I'm going to die. No, I am. And they chose to kill off Black Widow. It's a character that so many people wanted to see an arc from, and they just destroyed their chance at ever actually meaningfully doing that. And it pissed so many people off. I just think that this movie just has, way too much going on. It's kind of like a Spider-Man 3 in that way. It's just they took on so much. I feel like Guardians had a much bigger challenge ahead of it, and if Guardians hadn't succeeded, I don't know if we ever would have gotten an Endgame, because you have the characters from there in the movie. And then also, I just feel like, I just think Guardians is the much more complete story, better for, people to enjoy. And I just think it has the best music and, in the franchise. And I disagree on the jokes. I think the jokes are hilarious every time when Rocket goes, it was real. And I just love, and I think Bradley Cooper adds, so much in this ragtag group of fucking amazing characters. I just love this movie.
All right. And that is time. Pez, back to you. 2 minutes when you speak.
Avengers Endgame is a gut punch from the opening scene. We have one of the most emotional gut punches you've ever had with the Hawkeye scene, literally getting his family ripped apart from him. And it from there, it just hits you. You have the Avengers trying to regroup from this loss that they've never really felt before. They go after Thanos, and even though they go and they kill him, the cut when the screen goes black and it says 5 years later, you feel a sense of hopelessness. How are we going to get out of this? And of course, it's whatever it takes, and whatever it takes is time travel. And Tony Stark is able to figure out, because he's got the most intelligent AI system ever created on his side, and that's what he does. There's great stuff throughout the movie. Thor's evolution, going from grief in his loss and feeling like he has this weight from feeling responsible for losing the battle, to a depression, overeating. They turn it into a joke, but when you really stop and think about it, the fact that he's lost everything, he has lost his world, he has lost the people around him, he's lost most of his friends, and coming back and getting motivated again to actually be a hero is a tremendous journey. Professor Hulk is completely unique and something we've never seen before, letting Mark Ruffalo really take the Hulk character into new places that we've never seen. And again, the individual moments, especially in the final battle that we get, Cap wielding Thor's hammer is the best MCU moment we've ever had. It is a stand-up, standing ovation, cheering moment that will never be duplicated or replicated in any of the phases coming up. Guardians of the Galaxy, it feels like it's a movie that's always trying to lighten tension that's never there. It's a movie that kind of rips off other sci-fi movies. It's a rip of Star Trek. It's a rip of E.T. There's stuff ripped off from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It relies completely on nostalgia. I mean, 100% on nostalgia. Without the 80s references and everything, half the script would be gone. And a horrible villain with Ronan. I mean, one of the blandest, worst villains who gets defeated in the dumbest way in the history of comic movies by getting distracted from destroying the planet by a dance battle. Get out of here. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in a movie. Not just MCU.
All right, that is time. We will go ahead and move on to the 4-minute open debate. The time will start when the first person speaks.
I think the end of that movie where he dances, and distracts Ronan is actually really brilliant, because like you want like a really great fight scene, you think, and then they subvert it and they do exactly what the Guardians should do, and they embody that, exactly what that style is supposed to do. You have all these great jokes from James Gunn, so I don't think that's a detractor for this movie.
It completely undermines your villain in a span of 10 seconds who's this close to literally completing his mission for Thanos, and he gets distracted by a dude doing a couple of dance moves. It's one of the most ridiculous
because
moments.
It's unexpected.
You get a glimpse of a better villain with Thanos in his brief appearance completely upends Ronan. My movie has the better villain and the better motivation for the characters.
Honestly, I think Endgame relies way too heavily on nostalgia and fan service. Like, they basically, everybody, they all these movies culminated into this and just gifted all these storylines. I just think it's way too bloated. And
it has to be fan service. It's the culmination and the payoff of
it's just too fucking silly.
Movies. It absolutely has to be, and the runtime is completely warranted because
they sit there and they wait
of a culmination.
I'm going to say Avengers cut, and then they wait just so they can say Avengers.
Yeah, and you get the Avengers Assemble. You finally get it after all these years. You finally get them saying Avengers Assemble.
So nobody.
And when you get it, you stand up and cheer. It's exactly what you need. The emotion is completely there when he finally says it. It's a stand up and cheer.
It's just too expected. So and then basically, I just think like Guardians is just the complete movie there. I think that if you go back and you rewatch Endgame, you see just how hard it relies on the nostalgia. And, you talk about
nostalgia.
Like,
your
nostalgia
movie, literally, your soundtrack is complete and utter nostalgia. Half the jokes are him only having references from the 80s. That is exactly what nostalgia is. My movie does not rely on any kind of nostalgia. It's simply callbacks and payoffs.
I think Guardians actually uses. Endgame uses the nostalgia for all the other movies. That's like kind of fake nostalgia. But I think that the 80s style, bringing it back, it's super retro. And I think that like all this music really works in the movie and just makes it a really fun time. I think Endgame it's a sob story, and it just really is just too dark when you had your predecessor, which I think a lot of people actually like more in Infinity War, in super dark. Why would you?
The idea is that it starts dark. You have to have that cliffhanger ending, and the fact that it picks up right where the other one ends up. You have to start dark to have the triumph at the end, to have the characters getting their redemption, getting the victory that they didn't have in the previous movie. That's the entire point of the movie. Is it comes full circle
to leave Endgame on? I mean, it's just. Yeah, and
it's absolutely perfect. Iron Man's death is exactly the complete and utter character arc. It's the full circle from movie one with Iron Man.
But it had everything leading up to it, so it had all of this other movies doing the work. It didn't do any of the work. It just said, "Oh, let's kill him." And Guardians actually had to be a complete movie and had to go up against the fact that this could fail and be not a great kind of a blemish on the MCU, and we don't even know what the MCU would have been.
Oh, the MCU
Guardians
had plenty of blemishes before with things like Iron Man 2 or Thor: The Dark World, way before Guardians of the Galaxy, and it didn't kill the franchise. To say that if Guardians had failed, it would have killed it, they just would have minimalized those characters. That's silly, because they'd had movies that weren't received well up until then. My movie, on the other hand, was received very well. It's widely regarded as the best.
You had
MCU
to go in,
by
and you
tons
had
of
to
fans.
But you had to go in, you had to see if Guardians could bring in all of these unknown characters and see if they would work. I think
half of the Avengers characters were completely unknown.
I think that's why the MCU could come in and be what it was, because they wouldn't have taken as many risks if Guardians had failed. I think Guardians is just a complete fucking awesome movie.
And time. All right, we will move on to the closing arguments. Chad, you are up first. You will have one last minute to surmise your argument. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Avengers Endgame, it has a 3-hour runtime. It just, it's so bloated of a movie, and it relies on everything that came before it. And, I just feel like so many people say that Infinity War is the best Avengers movie and not Endgame. I think because it has that, Empire Strikes Back kind of ending where it's like everything's, dire. I just don't think, everything in Endgame works. It's just not as solid of a movie. I think there's a lot of good parts in Endgame, but as a cohesive whole, it's just not that great. I think Ronan is definitely a fine villain. I think that may be the weakest part of the movie, but I think everything else elevates it, that people love Guardians of the Galaxy so much. I think Endgame relies too heavily on everything that came before it that it forgets to be its own actual movie. And Guardians is just a blast from beginning to end. When you have the character moments between Star-Lord and Zoe Saldana, and then the We Are Groot is just one of the best moments in all of MCU.
And time. All right, Austin, you have the last minute of the battle. Time will start when you begin speaking.
Avengers Endgame is the ultimate payoff that absolutely warrants its 3-hour runtime. We pay off every single character beautifully. Tony's complete character arc ending with his death, he goes from being selfish in the very first MCU movie to completely selfless and giving the ultimate sacrifice. That is a 180-degree complete character arc. Natasha's death scene, she is dying for literally the only family she has ever had. She doesn't know her real family, so she's dying for the family that she has and making the hard choices that she's always had to make for all these characters, for essentially making the hard choices for the other Avengers. I mean, the character of Steve Rogers finally getting his dance with Peggy is just so satisfying. Literally going back to his first movie saying, "You owe me a dance." Look, it pays off all these characters so well, and the score is beautiful. The action is beautiful. It gives us Captain Marvel's best moment most relatable moment with, "Hey, Peter Parker, you got something for me?" I mean, completely making that movie worth it. Just Avengers Endgame is the ultimate payoff, and yeah, it's fan service because it's what the fans wanted.
And that will be time on an incredible match of Movie Battleground. Gentlemen, no matter what the decision is here, I hope you both take some pride in your performances tonight, because you have shown up and shown out. But it is out of your hands, and it's out of my hands, quite frankly, at the moment. So I will sit you in the back to rest up and await the decision as I go ahead and bring our judges in. And just to let a little more suspense build, there were a couple of things that I looked up and checked. So the statement was made that Guardians of the Galaxy grossed a third of Avengers Endgame's gross. So I actually decided to run the math on that because I was rather curious. And he's actually not far off. Guardians made around $772 million at the worldwide box office. Obviously, Endgame made $2.759 billion at the box office, becoming for a time the highest-grossing film of all time till some petty Avatar re-release overtook it again. And when you do the math on the numbers, Guardians actually grossed about 28% of the total gross that Endgame had. So it's actually pretty close to a third. In terms of other quick fact checks or things that were brought up, Academy success was brought up. Guardians of the Galaxy did achieve 2 nominations. However, it did not win. Avengers Endgame had 1 nomination in visual effects. It did not win that one either. The question was asked, why does why did they not go back and kill baby Thanos? That's actually something the film addresses very briefly. The very crude joke from Don Cheadle's Rhodey. And the explanation, whether or not you agree with it or think it's confusing, the explanation the film gives is that time travel, literally, they say, does not work like Back to the Future. When you go back and cause another event, rather than changing your reality, it just creates a branching reality in which that aspect is explored. Really, the real answer is Loki wasn't ready yet, so they couldn't talk about that aspect of like the TVA coming in and taking you and you getting to pal around with Owen Wilson, which Don Cheadle and Owen Wilson would make a good pair. I don't know if they've ever worked together, but I think that could really work well. But that's a tangent. Other things that came up. This is a common misconception, just in general. Everyone talks about the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy has a great 80s soundtrack. It's actually not from the 80s. All of the songs selected fall between a 1968 release and a 1979 release. So it's actually a bulk of 70s music that is listed in that film. Nice. And then the other thing that came up at the end was audience scores. Avengers Infinity War has a 91% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not the end-all, be-all, but it is a good aggregator. And all of the films are actually very close to it. Avengers Endgame has a 90%, so it is 1% less. Guardians of the Galaxy has a 92%, so 1% more, which really means everybody fucking loves these films. I don't think we're going to deny that. But we're done vamping. We're done building this up. I will go to Mr. Jake Tato, as concise as you can hit it. Who sold you with their argument, and thus who gets your vote?
This is the one point where I will inject a little of myself into it. These are my 5th and 6th ranked movies in the MCU. So tight battle for me personally. My 5 ranked film is Endgame. My 6th ranked film is Guardians 1. But Chad did it for me in the argument. And here are my notes if you want to check them out.
God help anyone who paused to try and read that. See him after class if you want to try and copy that chicken scratch down. JD, I move over to you as concise as you can hit it. Where does your vote go to?
I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm giving it to Pez. I think Chad spent too much time talking about how much Guardians a risk is, and I don't think risk necessarily equates to better. Specifically when Pez brought up so many more specifics about his movie, about Hulk's arc and Thor's arc and the accumulation of everything, and going back between the 3-hour runtime and, it has to be a 3-hour runtime because you're paying off so much. So, I generally, Pez got my point.
All right, we are 1-1, which means Mr. Jonathan Peck, focusing on the winner as concise as you can hit it. What was the point that sold you on your vote?
I will give my slight point slightly to Chad because he pointed out the things that he said about Guardians of the Galaxy. He just pointed out the thing that must want to make sure what is not only in the best interest of the MCU, but the great counters with Endgame, though, there's some flaws throughout the movie and all that stuff. So based on that alone, I will give my point to Chad.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for all your help tonight. I will go ahead and send you to the back because your winner by a final blind round score of 3-2, Chadwick Webb comes out with the victory, and he looks like he's on the verge of a panic attack. Chad, go ahead and bring it up here. Chad Webb, 2-0 now. Sir, how are you feeling after that match?
I'm kind of lost for words here. I do have some thoughts. This was an insane match for me. I prepped so hard for this, and I didn't know how Austin was going to approach it and stuff, but he fucking brought it. And the first 2 rounds, were just so rough. And I just thought that I was like, oh, I have all these points, but he was so good at just talking up his shit. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I can't seem to get anything. And then all of a sudden I just started to, I guess, bring it towards the end. I tried really hard and, I hit my strength and, shit. I don't know. what else can I say? I mean, I got that, you go to the blind round and you're like, all right, well, now there's like, what, 5 minutes of prep, if that. And then like, I haven't seen Endgame, just once. So I'm like, what do I say? And then, I'm just like, I'm really surprised. And I'm just like, I can't even believe, Austin was like really, really tough competitor. And yeah, it's going to be a while before I try to face somebody like Austin again. So,
well, unfortunately, this is a tournament, which means things happen a little quicker than they normally would. And you are in the 1-0 bracket, which means theoretically, after our first match, these are the 16 best players. What I'm building to is you have made it to the quarterfinals, which means your next matchup will be against the man who does still currently hold the honorary title of champion, Joe Farrelly. Will be your next competitor. Before we let you go for the night, what are your thoughts on your next competitor?
I really like Joe. I'm Joe's teammate in a league, and for trivia and stuff. We've had battles in trivia and stuff like that. I've seen his debate match, so we've had our tussles before, but we've also had our unity. And, I think, it's a fun time every time I get to hang out with him. I've never had to face Joe, obviously, but hearing, him being the champion, he's, I believe, won a couple times as well, so yeah, but he's got that title. So I'm like, well, shit. Okay. I have a lot of work cut out for me. And we'll just see if I can bring it as good as I did today, I guess. I'm excited about
Absolutely.
it.
The thing about Joe is because of the nature of where the league was when he won the title, he entered the league, worked his way up to win it, and then it went on a hiatus. So he never got to defend, but he technically went undefeated. And thus, by continuing to win, he is still undefeated. But you are also undefeated, sir, and I wish you the best of luck against him. We will see you in that match, good sir. All right.
Thank you.
So we will go ahead and send you to the back as we bring in, and I can't even, I'm not calling him a loser, man. He is 1.1. He is Austin Pez Howell. Now, sir, I am going to ask you one thing before we hear your thoughts, and it's please don't find a way to reach through the computer to bite my head off. What are your thoughts exiting this match?
Well, I'm not going to bite your head off, Aaron, but I will be launching an independent special investigation into how you pick judges and how well they listen to arguments. So that will be coming. You will be hearing from my attorneys on that one. So my fault is with the judges, not with Chadwick, who I think is a tremendous competitor. I knew I had my work cut out for him. I knew it was going to be a tougher challenge than my previous opponent, Jacob Barber, when I watched his match and saw how prepared he is. I think we both had an equal set of preparation for this match, as he alluded to. And whether it's outside of this tournament or in another video or whatever, I want my rematch with Chad. So you better give it to me.
Well, that is absolutely fair. Depending on how the next match shakes out, it may not work out right away. But we will certainly get you back in here as soon as we can, sir. I'm going to say something that, again, because it has the word loss and it stings a little bit, but I think you were more impressive in this loss than you were in your win in your last match. Ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch that last match. It got butchered ever so slightly just because I had to cut around some accidental spoilers, but he gave an absolutely incredible promo that made him seem like a threat. And if you thought that was some talk, he backed it here tonight. Austin, I hope if you're willing, we will have you back as soon as we possibly can.
Oh, I'll be back, because in loss only comes a rising tide of aggression that needs to be released on the next person that unfortunately will be thrown in my way. And then if you thought I brought a bazooka today, I'm going to bring a tank next time.
Absolutely. I look forward to your next match in the Movie Battleground, and I look forward to that phone call from your lawyer. I like speaking to professionals in that.
You'll be hearing from us very shortly.
Absolutely. We will see you next time, good sir. And with that, guys, the sun sets on another great Movie Battleground match. Depending on what region you're in watching this, because of the time we uploaded, the sun might actually be setting. We've been going for so long. But this was an incredible match. Chad and Austin brought it. This is if not definitively, if the only reason I'm not saying on camera it is definitively the best at this moment is just for the sake of fairness, I guess, this might be the best match in terms of competition we have seen of this rebooted league. These two gentlemen brought it. The fact that one has to exit the tournament this early is a damn shame. But Austin, I know, will be ready for that comeback. He is going to eviscerate whatever poor soul gets paired up against him. And I'm just going to apologize in advance. I don't know who that soul will be. I just feel like I should apologize because someone's going to have to play him. And of course, Chad moves on to an even bigger and better challenge in Mr. Joe Farrelly, who at least it'll be a slightly friendlier competition. They do know each other, so that'll be interesting. But we have so much more to bring you. Obviously, we've had a lot more action from the 0-1 bracket recently, but we still have a number of matches left in the 1-0 bracket. Some of our top competitors running for that title, and it'll all work towards two competitors on either side of the bracket coming together for a title shot. It's been a great time so far, and it'll be a great time in the future. Please be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, interact with the channel, and hope you guys enjoy the content, and check out everything else we have here to offer at TMG Entertainment. You might find something to your liking. With that said, on behalf of myself, my fellow producers of the league, my three judges tonight, Mr. Jake Reese, JD Domash, and Jonathan Peck, thank you for doing a job that is not easy. I know I've done it a lot. And to my great competitors, Mr. Austin Pez Howell, and our winner, Chadwick Webb. My name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care.